Welcome to the 100 Master Coaches series featuring master coaches from around the world. Let's journey together on this 100 Master Coaches series with your host, Coach Mel, MCC. For over a decade, Dr. D.E.1 Young has been dedicated to helping people create a positive, lasting change in their lives. He is a TEDx speaker with over 3 million views, an ICF Master Certified Coach, a National Board Certified Health and Wellness Coach, and a Certified Professional Diversity Coach. He is internationally recognized for his innovative, evidence, and research-based coaching approaches for high net worth individuals, licensed professionals, professional athletes, and public figures. Now on to the show.
Hello, and welcome to the 100 Master Coaches show. Today on the show, I have special guests all the way from Houston, Texas. He is Dr. D.E.1 Young. Can you give him a big round of applause? Welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, Mel.
Well, before we begin, we'd love to ask you just to kind of warm us up a bit and tell us a little bit about who Ivan is.
Well, I'm an ICF Master Certified Coach as well as a National Board Certified Health and Wellness Coach. And I'm a Certified Professional Diversity Coach. So with all of those things, I think the credentials were there or pursued not so much to authenticate, but to have the capacity and the ability to, in a transformational way, affect change for my clients. I've been practicing now over a decade and a half, and my practice specializes in high net worth individuals, public figures, entrepreneurs, and pro athletes and the like. But at the end of the day, they're human beings. It's just, it's one of those things. I remember I was having dinner years ago with a really famous jazz entertainer, and he made a comment. He said, the difference between us and the average person is when we were in a restaurant, he said, now you see that waiter over there? He said, well, if he spills his tray or makes a mistake, only these people in here will see it. But if we do it, there's a spotlight on and a microphone.
Yeah.
And I found that prior to me ever getting into coaching and being in pre-med and doing any of what I've done, I was in the entertainment business in the United States, producing some very significant, really famous people. And I realized that one day I was just tired of the touring and waking up, what city is this? And realizing that you could be in this crowd of people and feel so alone, and I think that as a coach, the people that end up in my office are people that are in that situation where there is, they are under a microscope, or they put themselves in a position where they feel as if they're under a microscope.
Yeah.
And great coaches, in my view, have the ability to resonate with their clients because they have something in common with them. And I think what I have in common with my clients or my audience is the fact that I've always been the exception to a rule, or the outlier, or in America is a very beautiful country, but it's very hypocritical and very racist. And I was always either the only Black kid in the school I went to, or I was the youngest person in the room, or I was in psychology or behavioral science. That is one of the few spaces where you see a lot of women. So I was seldom the only man in the space, and it's certainly the only African-American man. So this is, for me, I think it's an ability to bring transformation to people that are in that position where they feel, I'm over here, and very few people can understand what over here consists of. And I think we do that really well in my office.
That's really beautiful to hear, Ivan. And so true what you just said, right? There is this quote, it gets lonelier in the top. And it kind of brings that thought of when you're up there, everyone kind of, in a sense, avoids you for some reason. and you get to eat lunch on your own. You get to be by yourself. And I think that's the power of aligning with our friends, our coaches, and being able to be in that space with them and building that connectivity, as you say, that resonance, right? That they can say that, hey, you're not too bad after all.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and beyond that, I think what people don't understand is when you get in that space, the fall is detrimental. You know, it's one thing if you are on a little glider or you're crop dusting plane and you realize something goes wrong, you can probably land that thing in a field or just, you know, some safe space. But when you're up in 10, 20,000 feet, you know, crashing probably could be fatal. And one of the things that has been a real wake-up call for me was last year I found out I had cancer. And in June, it was like diagnosed, it was stage 2. By the time we got through dealing with setting things in motion and all the testing and screening, and then having to fight in my insurance company, and I've got great insurance, but you know, like most insurance, they like to take in money, but don't like to pay it out. We had to really appeal some things that were necessary for me. Well, by the time that happened, I was at stage 4 cancer.
Wow.
And that is when you're getting ready to go see grandmama and them. You know, typically, if you don't have the right environment, right care team, you're out of here.
Yeah.
Fortunately, in Houston, MD Anderson it's one of the leading, if not the number 1 cancer research hospital in the world. So I was very fortunate. And what was going on with me, the one guy that was number 1 in the world at doing the procedure, which was, you know, it was an oral cancer and they had to reconstruct this bone came from my leg, right? Wow. And so he was the guy that had done more of those surgeries and he invented a lot of the techniques. So it was just divine intervention. God just blessed me. Well, in the same way that I found myself in a situation where average wasn't going to work, I had to have people that were fine-tuned to the extent that they were able to bring what I needed, the way I needed it, with all the right ingredients, with all the right assessment tools and diagnostic tools and the competence to use it. And I think that's what the MCC level of coaching provides. An MCC is not handed to anybody. And what many people don't understand is to attain an MCC, the greatest shift isn't in your skill set. Yes, you go, when you're a PCC or an ACC coach, you tend to somewhat be still in a templated space, meaning focus, motivation, outcome, focus, meaning, outcome, and, you know, get the agreement and get a generative moment. And, you know, how's the client going to be accountable? But at the MCC level, there are 2 things that are extremely different. One is the first transformation isn't with your client, it's with yourself.
That's true.
Right? The second thing is the awareness of that evolution in yourself as a coach. Now, the competence is expected, but how authentic and seamless are you in how you engage your client? You know, and I think the correlation for me and my travail with cancer and that experience, you know, one of the things I attempt to bring to light for my clients is everything's happening for a reason. There's no accident here. Your opportunity isn't a consequence. It's a wake-up call. It's a revelation. Like one of my TED Talks, if you guys look it up, just Dr. D'Yvonne Young TEDx, not the one with the 3 million views. There's one that has like 18 or 20,000 views on it, but it talks about the redirects in life and why are they significant and meaningful. Well, my cancer experience, connecting that as a metaphor for my coaching methodology and style, was affording me a chance to see the value of time. You don't control it, so you better not waste it. The value of relationship, don't take them for granted. They're there for a reason, and they're they don't just go in one direction, right? Why things matter, and the opportunity that life gives you, even in a moment of what you may feel is tragedy or travail, it's really an opportunity of transformation.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that a lot of, and at MD Anderson, they practice an interdisciplinary approach to oncology. So I didn't just have a great oral surgeon, I had great proton laser treatment researcher and doctor in that space. And I had a great dental oncology team and just all great reconstructive surgeons and what have you. But the thing that they did well, and I think this is what great coaches do well, is they looked at things from multiple angles. And then they would meet and gather the perspectives in order to make effective decisions in the moment while utilizing evidence and research-based methodologies and approaches. Well, that's what great MCC level coaches do.
Yeah.
We should be able to observe our client and observe ourselves concurrently while bringing awareness to the nuanceical shifts and the evidence that's offered and presented in the session in such a way that it creates a profound curiosity while bringing a client to a point of worthiness, and how the coach can make them feel worthy of the opportunity that they may perceive as a problem, when in fact you're worthy of engaging this dilemma right now in your life because it's here for a reason, right?
So much that you have shared, Ivan. I would like to take a couple of steps back, if that's okay, and come to a place where you first entered in the world of coaching, which was pretty different from what you were saying before. And tell us a little bit about that story and how this became an attraction to you, right? Drawing you towards.
Well, it's funny. I wasn't looking for coaching. My mother was dying, and I was in pre-med. And when she finally, went through the transition process, I was left with an aftermath of a bunch of embezzlement and I'm an only child, so I'm an only adopted child. My father was already deceased. And I was a 40-year-old man. I was 39 and I turned 40 just before she passed.
Yeah.
And my life was upheaval. It was like, what just happened? And, at that point, my trajectory was pre-med to finish that. I had a foundation in neuropsych. And my goal was, to crack skulls, to be a neurosurgeon. And I just realized, okay, that just got derailed because I got all this crap going on in my life and trying to file charges and recover literally right under $500,000 had been embezzled right under my nose by people that were helping me care for my dying mother. So that was just, betrayal. And a couple of these people were relatives, so it was really upheaval. Well, at that point, there was this course called Problems in Normal Everyday Life at the university I was attending. I'm like, okay, damn it, that they made that for me. So I took the course, and then I started taking other developmental and positive psych courses, and it was like everything I read. And then the other thing was the anatomy and phys part. Between those two intersections, I really understood, okay, this is how the brain works. Came quite natural. Okay, this is how the mind works. Came quite natural. What didn't come natural for me was the correlation-based inferential crap that psychology, and I'm not saying this to offend any psychologist, but psychology, I think, has something that's very different than what coaching offers. Psychology allows someone to locate the problem and to go typically into the past. And I think that excavation, that anthropological attempt to, or archaeological dig into someone's life, I think it may be necessary, but I think it's elemental. I don't think it's a solution. Yeah. And psychology is rooted in discovering what happened to you. And you go there and you deal with it. Well, that doesn't offer, in my view, what people really need is, I need to figure out why in the hell this is happening. Or, okay, maybe it is something that did happen, but that's just more like a trajectory thing where, okay, here's where we are, but here's a starting point. Okay, I get that. But coaching offered transformation. And it's one thing that I learned from going through all that hell with my mother's death and the financial loss and the emotional and cognitive rape that came with that. I didn't need anyone to help me go and take a deep dive in my pain. That's the shit I wanted to leave. If anything, I wanted and needed answers to questions that I didn't know to ask.
Yeah.
Right. And what I did know was a couple of things. Psychology would help you go and look at the past, but seldom did it have anything to do with co-creating the future or mastering the present. Then I looked at coaching, and you, like myself, we started around the same time, that 2005, 2004. And I had a problem with a lot of coaching then, because when I looked at even the ICF, which now I'm a proud member of, I wasn't fond of the ICF back then, because I was like, you guys are taking all of these global dollars, but I don't see anybody that looks like me in leadership at your organization. Where's the diversity? And by the way, that they're addressing that now, but back then that was not the case. And then the other thing that really pissed me off was these coaches, these self-ordained coaches. I'm like, what do you know about the science of human development? What do you know about behavioral science? What do you know about the epistemological development of someone, or the psychology of gender or women? I mean, your opinion is, how in the hell is that helpful, especially if you don't have an academic foundation that's rooted in something? So that led me, even with the disdain, I received this award for Black Life Coach of the Year. And that was a global recognition. And, they came back and they said, well, we want you to serve as we explore developing this coaching program that's going to be diversity centered. Well, just so happens now that's one of the first in my opinion, one of the best diversity coaching programs in the world right now is a Coach Diversity. Well, when they came to me, they said, but you need to have an ICF MCC. Well, I had gone to a coaching program. It was a ACSTH program. And, I had the hours, but they said, well, you're a master coach. But then when I looked at ICF, well, no, I'm not. Okay, what the hell is that about?
Yeah.
Now, this is a message for you guys that are in these programs, and I'm not knocking anybody's programs. If they have that, ACSTH logo on there, it's a legit program. But after you get that, that is not the beginning of the end. That's the end of the beginning. You need to get these ICF credentials after you get the foundation, those training hours.
Yeah.
Because number one, there needs to be something that creates a best practices that you adhere to. There's a vetting process where you do need to submit some evidence that you are doing more than self-ordained work, or you took some expensive program, by the way. I've seen some of these coaching programs that are $10,000, and some of them I've gone, I actually charge somebody 10 grand for that crap. And then I've seen some programs that are like 3 to 5 grand. Like, okay, this is some good stuff. And I'm saying that to say what my experience brought me through was there's a need for authenticity, for best practices, for some standards, a code of ethics. And that's what attracted me to saying, okay, maybe this coaching world is a world that I can exist in. And hence subsequent to that, now I'm part of the Institute of Coaching, which is a part of the McLean Medical School. Yeah. It's an affiliate of that at Harvard University. Yeah. And I'm proud to be a fellow there. I'm also an advisor to well coaches and, the national board certification in health and wellness, which that was something that the National Board of Medical Examiners sets the standard for credentialing in that area. And I think that is where we have to house ourselves, especially those of us that are at the MCC level of coaching or aspiring to be there. That experience and losing my mother, going through hell, and then going back to, my senior year in pre-med, I saw then that there was a need for great coaches that were legit. And the ICF is the gold standard. I think in Europe, it's the Association for Coaches, which is somewhat equivalent to the ICF. But it's this environment and programs like what you've created that help set the bar and are the gold standard so that somebody can see, okay, well, if you're on the fence about your next level up, this conversation or this dialogue now should take you off that fence. But if you do take that step, come correct.
I'm just sensing, Ivan, on that space of authenticity. And that's a beautiful space to be in. I would consider myself an outlier too, in many cases. And just this thought of being an outlier and not feeling like the world's not giving me a fair go at things. And yet on the other side, feeling like you've got to prove it, if you know what I mean. You got to show your stuff. What are your thoughts on that balance? Because it's a necessary evil on one side or the other to kind of prove yourself and yet to be authentic as your true self,
Well, in our world, you have to do both. When, like I said, I wasn't fond of the ICF from my previous experience, but that changed when I realized that they had evolved in very significant ways as an organization. I see organizations that always brag about their diversity, especially in the academic space. Universities love to talk about how diverse their campuses are. And I'm like, well, how many tenured professors do you have that look like me or that are Asian or Middle Eastern or West Indian?
Yeah.
How many women are in positions where they sign checks instead of having to submit something on a purchase order, right?
Yeah.
That and when I started realizing that differentiated where I had to be in order to accept the fact that I may be an exception to your rules, but there are rules that we have to be governed and play by. I think just like in America, it's the American Medical Association, where they look at, are you qualified to be a board certified anything, right? Or the National Board of Medical Examiners. Well, that makes a difference. Being an MCC level coach, unless something has gone wrong post credentialing, at least you know you're dealing with an individual that's been vetted heavily, where they have done some background checks, and you had to submit logs where you have literally thousands of hours in experience. You have to demonstrate proficiency, and it's not something they hand out. Matter of fact, I'll be the first to tell you, when I submitted my recordings for MCC, one of my trainers, mentor coaches, was a former credentialing person at ICF. And she said, "Oh, submit this, is great." We did, and one of my recordings did not pass. And I'm like, what the hell? And I thought about it. I was pissed. And then I took it to someone else who I hold in high esteem, a well-qualified MCC. And she said, "I don't see why this didn't pass." And finally, I'm hot as fish grease. I'm pissed. And I'm getting ready to challenge it, because I'm thinking some assessor got my stuff and could detect that, okay, this is not a white male or a white woman. This is some African-American guy. And at that point, we had this excuse for a president. So in that season in America, racial bias and that stuff had become emboldened, and I remember just thinking, this is so freaking unfair. And the same person that was a former assessor and part of the ICF in a very high position, she said, "Do you mind if I submit this to Carly?" And she is the head of assessment, but it was blind. Carly didn't know me. I didn't know her, right? So it's just hey, listen to this. And Carly assessed it, and she wrote some comments that I had to consider. And the comments put me in a space where the part of me that wasn't angry, the part of me that was objective, said, okay, what if she's right? And, Mel, that led me to going and reading book after book. I must have read maybe 20 books before I submitted another recording. And I read maybe 20 books, did a bunch of research. And at that time, concurrent to that, I was also studying for my national board exam for health and wellness coaches. So that's science. That is like, it's not just theory. That is like science, evidence, and research-based stuff that you have to know to pass a 4-hour proctored exam where they search you before you go in the room, right? Yeah, and nobody's in that room but doctors, nurses, nurse practitioners, lawyers, it's that environment. So I'm studying all of this stuff, read all of these books, and I realized I should not have passed that recording. And this is where I go back to where you said outlier. There are 30,000 coaches that are credentialed through ICF globally. But when you think about the number of people, we look globally, billions of people. But when you look at the MCC, that's only about 4% of all of those ICF credential coaches. Now, if we throw in coaches that went to programs and didn't get credentialed by ICF, but they're calling themselves a professional certified coach because they took 125 hours somewhere, but they still don't. And I'm not referring to the PCC certification from ICF. I'm talking about where the initials may say certified professional coach. That is not an ICF credential, right? Or it may say certified master coach. That is not an MCC master coach. So please understand the distinction. Well, if we throw those in, MCC coaches are now probably 1% or less of coaches that you can get. In other words, exclusive group. And you pay and you get what you pay for, right? If we go today and we shop for vehicles, what you're going to pay for a Kia and what you're going to pay for a Rolls Royce is going to be different, but what you get, and I'm not knocking a Kia, but I'm just going to say that Kia is not a damn Rolls Royce. It's not a Bentley. It's not a Lamborghini. And when you start talking MCC, you are talking the Lamborghini equivalent, the Bentley equivalent, the Rolls Royce equivalent of a coach. And it's at that point, for you as a client, you just bought into your life a change agent. You can go from being successful to thriving, but now you can go to flourishing, right? And I think that is justification for why that credential matters and why one can humble themselves and meet those standards, those gold standards to become an MCC level coach.
I totally agree. And you know what? We have something in common here, Ivan. I went through that same process. One of my recordings did not pass. And I went on this journey to discover or rediscover myself. It took a while. At one point of time, I kind of gave up as well because I sent it again and it didn't pass again. I'm like, you know what? This is not for me. And yeah, similar to you, I had to go through this process, which I think was very needed to kind of ask myself, am I just perhaps too proud to recognize certain things that these assessors are telling me? And perhaps I have to dig deeper into myself and to find out those areas that I really needed to work on in me first, right? And that was a beautiful journey by itself, just understanding me a lot better, being able to come truly with, that saying in the space of not knowing. And I thought I already practiced that, but I guess there is still a whole journey ahead of not knowing.
There's no way that you have resurrection without crucifixion. When you make up your mind that I'm going to be the best of the best of the best, then that's a new benchmark. Matter of fact, it's a whole new bench, because there's this process called transmogrification. And typically we see that when we look at a caterpillar, where he's crawling on the ground and eating leaves and all of this, and something summons him to this season where he is no longer part of what's familiar. He entombs himself, literally, voluntarily says, I'm going to get away from everything and everybody that's familiar. And in that process, those 64 legs become 4 wings. That terrestrial lifestyle now is replaced by just letting the wind carry you sometimes, and other times you determine where you're going to carry yourself. But the bottom line is you're flying heads above what you used to do, what you used to be, and where you used to dwell. And that is the process that I think you and I undertook when we humble ourselves and realize that, you know what, maybe there's something yet to be unearthed in me. And yet to be refined in my abilities or increased in my capacity. And making our minds up to submit to that call is why MCC level coaches have the power to empower their clients, because if you're not empowered, how in the hell are you going to empower someone else?
Life is obviously a lot different from when we started, right? 2004, 2005. And today, obviously, with the different needs and obviously different people as well, where do you think this trajectory of coaching is going ahead in that near future?
Mm-hmm. I think now we are at a place where we're going to be much more focused on doing what is evidence and research based in coaching. And I think it's about time. There has been too much to take place where being politically correct and accommodating comes at a cost. You know, the standards and practices that we need to do now, we need to adapt and evolve. Now more than ever, there's a need to be critically sound in methodology and in practice, and especially as it relates to capacity. There is no other move to make, because coaching is the new behavioral science, though it's not new. I mean, you know, it's 20 years old, but older than that when you consider its foundation in positive psychology.
Yeah.
But there is so much more, where there's this intersection of cognitive behavioral therapy meets dialectical behavioral therapy to, you know, positive psych, to motivational interviewing, to trans-theoretical model and approaches and change, and all of the things that are the tools of coaching.
Yeah.
Now those who are in the profession must master those tools. And I think that the strain or a sifter now is going to be a lot harder to get through, and it should be harder because the needs of people are so much different.
Certainly is. And with that move towards more, as you say, evidence-based, we come to a space that is, as much as this work of what ICF is doing is amazing, and I fully support it, there's still so much to be done.
I know they just contacted me and probably a few other MCCs asking us to participate in a review process that will be looking at what does credentialing look like moving forward. And it needs to be done. Yeah. People have not slipped through the cracks, and I think we need, instead of opening the door, to close it a little further. There's just no room for foolishness now. And for those of you that are looking at mentor coaches, vet them critically and heavily, and ask them questions like, you know, what is your background? What is your methodology? Are you doing evidence and research-based coaching? And if you are, what are the areas that you have credentialing in, a certification in, or expertise in? And do a session with them. That will tell you everything. You know, if you want to go to a restaurant, just, you know, one of the things I've learned from spending a lot of money eating expensive food is, if you just take a sample of what's in the pot, it'll tell you what the rest of the pot is like, right? And that's how we should look at coaches. We should measure for competence and look for someone that has great reviews, a track record that's verifiable. You should be able to find articles written by them in somebody's publication, be it national or international. You know, if somebody looked me up, they quickly see I have several articles in Forbes magazine. You know, I'm part of the Forbes Coaching Council. So there should be some other place other than their website where they are acknowledged and respected for what they have contributed to coaching as a community and as a science.
Beautiful. I often ask this question, because I think it's important for young coaches coming in, Ivan. What would be your thought for them? Because there are, again, there's so much advisory out there, so much on the internet. Some say, yes, you've got to build the competency of yourself in coaching. And then on the other side, you've got to kind of find your voice as well, yeah, so that you will start attracting the right kind of people that you want to work with, right, as a coach, right? And then there's the whole business side of things that comes later. What would be your thoughts for younger ones just coming into our industry right now?
Well, real simple. Everybody's not your client. That's the first thing. Yes. Everybody's not your client. So just don't get so thirsty for making a dollar that you prostitute your gifts and your abilities.
Yeah.
Look for alignment with clients that resonate with you.
Yeah.
The other thing is make sure that before you start seeing clients, that you really know your stuff. One of the most horrible things that can happen is as a coach, you are not ready yet. You need to have competence and capacity to coach well. And that's why having a good mentor coach is very important, because in your branding and your messaging, it is critical that you be the product. In other words, if you look at my public figure page on Facebook, or the stuff I put out on LinkedIn, or you go and look at one of my TED Talks or something, I actually live what I put forth as a brand. It is not all talk.
Yeah.
And if you caught me on the weekend at 3 o'clock at the gym, I'm the same guy you'll see in the office with you 3 p.m. on whatever day you're in my office. The other thing is, don't think you made it because you got a couple of certifications. If anything, you need, and there's a reason why you have to get CEUs, and continue education, because the science is constantly advancing. And if you don't understand how to apply these advances in coaching science, you probably aren't that good. One thing that I've learned is I have 90% of my clients are either referrals or repeat business. I don't have to solicit business. I don't. And I'm very fortunate. I have a coaching practice that does a mid 5 figures a year. And that's not including speaking engagements and books and other things that I do. So you can make a good living, but people come to you for your capacity, not for your income funnel and for your marketing. Because just imagine this, you go to a restaurant and on TV, the food look great. Everybody looks like they're having fun there. And the service on the commercial will look great, but you get in the restaurant, service sucks, the place is nasty, and the food tastes like something you could fertilize a field with. Would you go back? Is it in alignment with the messaging that's been put out there?
Yeah.
So as a brand, as a coach yourself, you can't be all messaging. There must be some substance that matches your messaging.
Yeah.
And you need to be the best reflection of your product.
Yeah.
Like attracts like. And what you're seeking is equally seeking you if you prepare yourself for it when it shows up at you.
Such great advice there. Really. Like attracts like. So true. We've almost come to the top of the hour, Ivan, and just wanted to thank you for this time, just sharing your heart out. I think the great thing about this is we just rocked up and went on a river ride.
Yeah. At the end of the day, there's not that much distance between you and I, even though geographically there is, but we're actually side by side in core values and beliefs and approaches.
That's right.
I would just offer that in closing this out. If you're watching this, it's not by accident or happenstance. It's probably a message that you should heed, because as a coach, you are either going to contaminate your client or you're going to contribute to your client. Don't contaminate them. Get your stuff together and make sure that what you bring to the table is a value add.
Yeah. And with that, I say thank you, Ivan, so much for your contribution, not just to this call, but your contribution thus far, and really wishing you the best for your future.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me, Mel.
You're welcome. This has been the 100 Master Coaches Show. Today with Dr. D. Ivan Young and myself, Mel. We'll say catch you on the next one. Take care, stay safe. God bless. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
You have been watching the 100 Master Coaches series with your host, Coach Mel, MCC. Brought to you by Catalyst Coach. www.catalystcoach.live. We will be right back with our next Master Coach on the 100 Master Coaches series.